Hi, this is Mark Arnold with another episode of Fun Ideas Podcast. And today we have a returning guest. It is Mr. Wesley Hyatt. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing very good. Thank you so much for having me.
Right. And of course, last time you were on the show, we were discussing Betty White, and who has unfortunately passed away since our last discussion.
Yes.
But since our last discussion, I actually did get a copy of the book, and it's an excellent book. So I don't know if you have one to hold up, because, but it's Betty White on TV, and it's through Bear Manor Media, and we could talk about that a little bit. But my main reason for having you back on the show is, even though I'm a Betty White fan, I'm a bigger Carol Burnett fan.
Yeah.
And when you were on the show the first time, we kind of went through all your books, and we talked about the Bob Hope book and everything else. But Carol Burnett Show has been my life dream to see them all, basically.
Yeah.
And
me too.
Now with current technology of streaming things, they're pretty darn close. So I'm very happy. So I started watching them, and I started emailing you questions. It's like, oh, you missed episodes and stuff like that. Are you going to do another edition? And then I said, I'm asking you so many questions, I might as well just have you on the show again. We can just kind of hash it out and discuss it, and you can kind of fill me in on some things that I didn't know before, because I had seen the first 5 seasons before.
Yeah, and, like most people.
And just other things that just kind of came into my head, and stuff like that about the show. So welcome to the show. I guess tell me a little bit about how you came about. Let me hold up the book. It's this one I did bring.
Yes.
The Carol Burnett Show Companion.
You got it.
So you glad we have this time. I don't know the subtitle.
Yeah. You got a bookmark. Where are you at in the book right now?
Well, I actually haven't watched all 11 seasons. Because
you call yourself a fan?
Yeah, because I've seen season 6 through 11 over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
So now I'm watching them chronologically. Yeah. And if it's a skit I've seen before, I just have it on, and I'm doing other things, which totally happened starting season 6. I'm like, okay, I've seen that one, I've seen that.
Yeah.
Unless it was the one with Lily Tomlin, which I always forget the name of, the Women in Prison or something.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that skit.
Yeah. And well, so that's one of their best shows ever. That was with her and Steve Lawrence. That was a great show from start to finish. That was one that had the interesting introduction of them doing a production number of we're all singing in the same band and coming out in colorful costumes. It's one of their best. Yeah.
Right. And that one's actually easily accessible and has been for years. I mean, originally it was on the Columbia House tapes, and they put them out on DVDs. And then I think Time Life took over the DVD series. So I'm sure it's readily available. It's been in Carol Burnett and Friends syndication for years, at least part of that episode. And, it is a classic. So, but I always have to watch that one again. I love Vicki Lawrence whenever she does the dumb girl voice, and she does it a lot.
Dumb girl,
and then she gets it on the head. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Anyway, so I am up to, this is the last episode I watched before we talked. I'm just watching 2 or 3 episodes, sometimes more, depending on.
Yeah, you don't have, there's no rule you have to watch a bunch of them at one time.
But I'm up to November 15th, 1972, and that's why the bookmark is here. John Davidson and Ruth Buzzy. So,
okay.
I know I saw the beginning of the episode, because it's where Carol is dressed as Zelda. And Ruth Buzzy is Gladys Ormsby from Laugh-In, and they're kind of finding seats in the audience and making self-deprecating comments about how ugly they are and things like that. It's cute and amusing. So
it's interesting that Ruth did the show that year, because that was the last season of Laugh-In as well. And I've seen they've had all Laugh-Ins now out on DVD, and I thought I'd never see that last season again, because George Slaughter didn't produce it and he was holding a graduate. They've included it there, and you can tell. It's very telling that show really was going downhill that season. And Carol guest starred on the show on Laugh-In during that time. Significantly was 1 week when Lily Tomlin was off during that show. So I think
I don't think she was a regular anymore in the final season.
Lily was in the last season. The last season it was her, Ruth, Dennis Allen and Richard Dawson and Moosey Dryer were the only carryovers from previous seasons.
Oh, okay.
And the newcomers, there were a couple of good ones, like Patty Deutsch and so on there, but most of them didn't click, and it was well, that's a different story.
Yeah,
So
I know, but I will say this in defense of the sixth season. I actually surprisingly, I actually enjoyed it surprisingly, even though I had seen them the last time when I was like 6 years old. So I didn't know, because when you're 6, you go, oh, this is great, and then you see it again, and you're like, ooh,
Yeah.
I still like Willie Tyler and Lester. I did then, and they handled themselves very well in that season.
Yeah.
I don't think Rowan and Martin. I know we're supposed to be talking about that, but you didn't write the laugh-in book. I had to get a different book.
Yeah, I know.
There was a good laugh-in book from McFarland Press, but anyway.
Yes.
Anyway, Rowan and Martin, I think, still held it together, and of course Gary Owens is still announcing, so it had some semblance. But yeah, the only thing I can think of about that season, though, and I watched it about a year or so ago, is it almost seems like the natural bridge from classic, variety show, kind of like Carol Burnett, to what became Saturday Night Live. They weren't like pushing barriers, but at the same time, it was a little more loose that last 72, 73 season. That's what I kind of thought about it, when I was watching it. Now, you probably wouldn't have thought of that at the time, but, in retrospect. Now, did Lorne Michaels work on that show too? I thought he did.
He worked on Laughing. Yes, he did.
Okay,
so that influenced him, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
And I always think Ed Sullivan's show influenced Lorne Michaels too, because he had the Muppets on the first season. Of course, Ed Sullivan had the Muppets and I know, especially, I know that we're talking about other shows now, but Saturday Night Live, especially like the first 10 episodes of the first season, they were really just trying to find their way, what works, what doesn't work, and everything like that. This is interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway,
exactly.
So Carol Burnett, same kind of thing. When she started, you can recap the story, but it's basically the push the button story, and they were kind of finding their way for at least a year, possibly because they thought maybe this is it. I'm going to get. Is that correct? When they did the first season.
Well, they were pretty much assured they were going to get a year on CBS based on her contract that she had when she signed with them in 1962, when she was at the, I guess, height of her early popularity with being on the Gary Moore Show. She had that condition with CBS that her agent put in there, and that Mike Dan and his ignorance, because it was the first time Mike Dan as CBS programming head was dealing with a contract for an actual talent. He allowed it, that there was a possibility that she could have her own variety show for 30 shows on the network for one season. And so, it was in the around Christmas time of 1966, she and her husband looked at each other, and they're like, they had moved to Hollywood, and they weren't getting as many offers as they thought from the time. And they're like, we got to get something. And then it hit Carol like, oh yeah, I've got that clause in my thing. Let me go ahead and do that and get it together. So that prompted a whole search by them of people to include, some of which came from Gary Moore, other from other variety shows, some different writers. It was a thing, a lot of good luck and serendipity involved there too. The biggest being Harvey Korman. They ran into him when he was staging the comedy sketches for the Steve Allen Comedy Hour, which was a summer replacement on CBS. And they knew him from Danny Kaye Show, and what a great job he did there. And it's like, we got to have you. They were thinking about having some other types, other Harvey Korman types, I guess, there, but now that they get to Harvey Korman, that was a big assist for them there too. And but yeah, it was there was a seasoned amount of people, but at the same time, if you look back when the Carol Burnett Show did, they were all under 40, which was pretty unusual for a variety show in 1967. If you look at Ed Sullivan, Red Skelton, Jackie Gleason, Dean Martin, most of them were in their 50s or above at the time there. It was starting to gray out. And so that gave the show kind of a youthful look at itself at the same time.
Did you think, besides the contract, that they were willing to give it a chance just because Smothers Brothers had debuted earlier in the year and done reasonably well, and they were younger as well?
Yeah, Smothers Brothers was a big surprise to CBS. Mike Dan said that was his hardest programming job, was trying to find something to beat Bonanza for about 5 or 6 years in the 60s. And when the Smothers Brothers cut into Bonanza's ratings, that was a big selling point for it there too. At the same time, as Mike Dan, I talked to him before his death, and I asked him about the show, and he said, even though they had a contract, they didn't have any say about where he could put it in the CBS schedule, so he's like, I could have put it on Saturday mornings if I wanted to, but obviously he didn't with the amount of money they were spending on it. So he gave them what some thought was one of the toughest time slots CBS had, which was Mondays from 10 to 11, which everyone's like, well, that's following Lucy and Andy Griffith and all that stuff. Shouldn't that have been too hard? But CBS had a tough time that period there. There was a time there when Ben Casey was doing better than it in that period. And then they just had some others that just didn't click, and they tried about everything. So they put her in that slot. But even then, when she debuted, there were a lot of stations, CBS stations, that didn't carry the show initially because I guess the worries about, for whatever worries. There was the fact that Carol was one of the co-hosts of The Entertainers, which was like a rotating variety show back in 64, 65. And it had bad ratings, and it was a lot of controversy about her saying that she got injured on the show and that affected her doing her Broadway career at the same time. It was kind of a debacle. So that might have played into it too. But the early ratings were good enough that they built up, and the show got its renewal and went on from there.
Yeah, a couple questions based on everything you said. I reread your book kind of quickly, so I don't remember everything I read. But I mean, how was Harvey Korman magically available? I mean, was Danny Kaye's show actually canceled, or was it going to go for another season?
Danny Kaye's show was canceled.
Okay.
Yeah, it ran 4 years. The last year it was pretty much obvious it was going to be canceled there. So Harvey then took the job of staging the comedy sketches for the Steve Allen Comedy Hour there at CBS Television City. And that was where Carol and them were doing some initial work, and they ran into Harvey and they said, Harvey, we're doing a new show. You got to do it. And he's like, oh, okay. All right. I'll go ahead and do it. They had looked at people like Bernie Kopell and some others as possible second bananas to Carol. But I think Harvey was the one that they just thought was the prime candidate for the job. As for the other regulars, Vicki Lawrence actually auditioned against, I'm going to hate to, I get her name, but it was another blonde actress who I interviewed, and it's in the book.
Yes. Well, that's not important. I mean,
yes.
But I do have a question about that too.
Yeah.
But I'll go back to Harvey for a second. It's like,
Sure.
Was Harvey, you did talk to Chris Korman, his son, right? So
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay, so he might have answered this for his dad. I met Harvey once, but it was not a situation where I could ask him a ton of questions. So,
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would have been there for a couple hours.
Yeah.
Like, Harvey this, Harvey that. But it was. I'll tell you what it is, and then I'll say my questions. I used to go to San Francisco State, and graduated from there. Ronnie Shell also, graduated there, and he would do this benefit show every year, and we'd go see it, and we'd be behind the stage. I had a friend who could get us backstage, so I kind of got to be kind of friends with Ronnie. And every year he had his buddies. So one year he had, and I don't remember, they all blur together. So I went like 3 or 4 times. So over the course of the 3 or 4 times, one year actually had Tim Conway and Harvey performing like classic skits like the dentist skit, which things like that on stage. And this was probably 4 or 5 years before Harvey's death, so that's roughly the time. Carl Ballantine did his magic act.
Wow.
Merv Griffin came out. And this is the one that kills me. And now I can't think of his name. Who's the trumpeter guy that was always on the show with him on Merv Griffin show?
Jack Sheldon.
Yes, Jack Sheldon. Thank you. So, you know, I meet Merv Griffin. He's gracious and very open and everything. Hi, how you doing? You know, everything. And then I meet Jack. Hi, how you doing? And it's like, it wasn't until I got home, because, you know, I'm a kid of the 70s. I go, that's the guy who did Conjunction Junction, and I'm just a Bill, and I didn't get to ask him about that. You know, now of course he's gone.
Yeah, I know,
you know,
I know.
You know, I hate that when, you know, like at least Carl Ballantine, I didn't know he did the magic thing at the time, and then I found out later, oh, he's done this forever. But I knew him from McHale's Navy, so
yes, of course,
anyway, but going back to Harvey, was Harvey kind of scrambling around at that time for work? Because wasn't it that season that he was also doing the Great Gazoo for the Flintstones and stuff like that?
He was doing that the previous season, 65, 66. Yeah.
Okay.
And he did some stuff. I don't know if he was actually scrambling, but I think he was available, you know, and definitely was interested in, you know, doing the show with what Carol and her husband were offering him at the time there. So that fit in fairly well. And as for the others, besides Vicky, it was Heather North. That's who it was. She's a lovely lady. Got to talk to her. She and Vicky auditioned to play Carol's sister in the Carol and Sis sketches. But Heather said when she came there, she realized Vicky was going to get it because Vicky dyed her hair to look even more like Carol than Carol herself. And Vicky already resembled her.
Audition just kind of a formality? Because when did that Miss Fireball contest story happen?
Miss Fireball happened I think back around Christmas of 66 too, when Carol was pregnant and everything. She, as Carol said, she was 14 months pregnant, you know, and came and saw Vicky, and then when Carol had her child, Vicky came to the hospital and they said, "Oh, you're Carol's sister," and let her right in there and let her congratulate. So yeah, I think they wanted to have her, but I think they had to kind of get some film on her, so to speak, you know, some tape to see that she could do it. And so they went through a formality of having an audition. Apparently, I think there might have been, I'm not even sure. I don't know if Joyce Bulifant was in the running or some others. There might have been a few others. They did the initial like talking, you know, just reading out loud and auditioning. But Heather did go on the on-air edition, and when she lost it, she didn't care because she was really she was mostly typecast in soap operas. She'd done one called Paradise Bay, and then she did a couple of years on Days of Our Lives. And while she wasn't thrilled about that, she fell in love with the director on that, H. Wesley Kenny, and they were married until his death a couple of years ago, happily. In fact, he was the one who answered the phone when I interviewed her. So, honey, here you go. So
wasn't Heather North, didn't she play Lou Grant's girlfriend for a few episodes of Mary Tyler Moore Show?
No. You're thinking Sherry North.
Sherry North. Sorry. Oops.
Heather North.
Heather North. What is she?
Heather North, you might know better from Scooby-Doo. She was the voice of Daphne.
Yeah.
On the original Scooby-Doo cartoons.
Okay.
So yes. So so she liked that. Yeah. But she after the 70s, she pretty much retired and seemed very happy doing things. And like she said, she's like, I could have never done Mama like the way Vicky did. And she said she had no regrets about doing that, even though when on Vicky's talk show back in the 90s, Harvey was a guest there, and he said, "Yeah, I remember that audition. That other girl was much better than you. I don't know why we didn't use her." He was joking, of course, you know, but
I mean, obviously they probably did as a formality, but also to show maybe the big wigs, you know, who are you having on your show? You know, I mean, there's still probably a little bit of, you know, hands-on just to kind of make sure that 30 weeks aren't 30 weeks of just Carol staring into the camera or something, you know.
Well, as far as I know, they didn't have too much network interference at the time. Definitely not what they have nowadays. They were able to, and you know, again, like I said, most of the cast was under 40, so that's very unusual for a CBS show at the time. There, you know, that they had, and you know, Vicky was very adorable and got a lot of young viewers' attention. Obviously, she was around 18 or 19 at the time. And
it's amazing how young she is when you look back
yes,
on it. Like I'm in 1972 and I go, she's only like 22 here, and she's
yeah,
already the growth in her career from 67 to 72 already. Even by 69, 70, she's like already better than she was.
yeah. Well, she decided, she's like, when she realized after the first year, okay, this is something that can really develop for me, and I'm not going to be a dental assistant like she planned originally. She said, okay, then I need to learn this stuff better. I need to learn from Harvey and Carol and everything and do this. Otherwise, I'm just going to be, because she was basically stuck doing just the Carol and Sis sketches, right, and maybe the musical numbers and dance numbers there, right, for a while.
Now, in the first season especially, she actually missed some episodes. Was that because she was learning her craft, or was it stage fright? Because I know there's that one Q&A where she comes out and she's all biting her nails and all shy and everything, and they
have
ask
been
her, how old are you? And she goes, I don't know.
It might have been that, or it might have been Joe Hamilton being cheap, to be honest.
Oh, okay. Right.
Carol's husband, the executive producer of the show. It was never said, but I always have the feeling that, every season they ended with a family show. Well, saying it's family is a cute way of saying, we don't have to pay a guest star for this one, right, so we can save money and, spend it on a cast party at the end of the year, right? Something like that. Yeah, she did not, if they didn't need her, they wouldn't have her there, and so, and they didn't really need her until, you said, about the third or fourth season. They started using her in more comedy sketches and could see what she was doing with the dumb Dora voice and everything. Right. And it was amazing to see her growth there.
Right. And that's one thing I noticed watching him chronologically, which I was always thrilled to finally be able to do, yep, is a lot of the things that, I started watching it probably around this time Tim Conway joined the show as a regular cast member,
mm-hmm, yep,
in the first place. So yep, 75 or so.
Yep.
Like I don't even remember Lyle on the show. Like, so when I see repeats later, like the first time I saw an episode that had old episode or old was the 10th anniversary show.
Yeah.
Which I want to ask you about too. But
sure.
And it's like, I go, who is this guy? Oh, that's the guy on Wonder Woman. And I go, he did comedy? I didn't know that, because I knew him from Wonder Woman,
Yeah.
So, I was a kid, so,
yeah,
and my dad would go, yeah, didn't you ever see him? My dad always is like, didn't you see that? It's like, no. I mean, you mentioned this already. You said, the first season was at 10 o'clock. And that was part of the reason I never got to see it till like 75, because they wouldn't let me stay up that late. I was really too young initially.
It was on Mondays at 10 for the first 4 seasons. Then it was Wednesdays at 8 for 71 through middle of 72, and then moved to Saturday nights at 10. Yeah.
And I might have seen it briefly when it was at that 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have registered with me about Lyle or Vicky or anybody else. I basically kind of knew Carol Burnett because she showed up on Sesame Street and other other variety shows that I watched, like Flip Wilson and things like that sometimes. And she was on Lucy's show, and I watched the Here's Lucy and things like that. So, I'd see Carol, and Carol was the one I zoned in on. Like, I don't even remember, if I knew who Harvey was, but by the time I started watching it in 75. Yeah, I knew who everybody was except for Lyle. And so it's interesting. Now, Lyle, there's kind of a weird thing with him that she was looking for an announcer, but was she also looking for like a hunky, studly man to fall back into at the same time? And was it supposed to be the same person?
Yeah, I think they decided that would be the good kind of getting two birds killed with one stone, so to speak, because Carl Reiner, they wanted Carl Reiner originally to be part of the show before they got Harvey, and Carl was just like, I got too much going on there, I love you guys, but I can't. But he said, I will. He said, what Carol needs is someone like a Rock Hudson type against her, who's handsome, and she can just do her man hungry routine on him and everything like that. And so they put out on a request for guys who are, I don't know if they said studly or whatever back at the time. They indicated they wanted some handsome one theirs. And when Lyle came to audition, he was the one they noticed that all the secretaries were looking at and checking him out a couple of times there at CBS. So he pretty much got the job when they saw him the first time. And he was there on the show for the first 7 years. And then he just decided he wanted to see what else was out and available there. He was not going to, I don't think they were going to give him a raise or anything like that. Anything, there was not that much. And I don't know, might have been creatively, there might have been little more he could add to the show other than what he was doing there. It was getting a little old, and I think the writers were getting a little tired sometimes of having Carol lust after him, in different sketches and everything, especially with Carol getting more mature, shall we say.
Right. Although I will say this about Lyle Wagner, I do have a couple of questions about his career. First of all, was he known for anything prior to the show? I know he did the Batman audition and lost that, but had he been on anything before?
He did some kind of movie, I think it was Swamp Women or something. I got a limited that was filmed down in southern Georgia, and Steve Beverly, our mutual friend, can tell you about how horrible it was seeing like the big premiere, and it was just a bad thing. He was a struggling actor at the time there.
And had he done any announcing or voiceover work prior?
Not anything of note that I could find.
I mean, he does an excellent job. I mean, he has a good resonating voice, the Carol Burnett Show, like what now
he did, but he had limited acting capabilities. Sometimes I remember there was one scene where he was pretending to cry and Carol was like losing it on camera. She's like, but
I thought he improved just as well as Vicky did, because the two things that stick out for Lyle's that I love, I just love this skit anyway, even if Lyle wasn't in it, but it's like one of Lyle's best is Lovely Story, the parody of Love Story.
Yes, yeah.
Where he's the doctor and he goes, "Uh-oh," and he puts everything back. And he goes, the disease, we don't know anything about it, but it's highly contagious, And then he takes out this little toy violin. And it's just, very funny, very clever and everything like that. And, he does a very good job. The other one, now this one's really more of a Tim sketch, but I love it. I mean, it is the one with the little Nazi puppet, the Hitler puppet, and of course Lyle cracks up, but I always say, most people other than Harvey were pretty good about not losing it too often. And Lyle was probably the one that could do it the best, but I mean, that's where Tim got him, and I thought it was great, but I thought he did an excellent job being kind of more dramatic in that particular role. So I don't know if that was like an audition for Wonder Woman, because then that happened to be during World War II or whatever. But that was my question about when he left. I mean, did he know he was going to go to Wonder Woman, or he just was tired of doing comedy?
Wonder Woman was a year or two later. He really had no big job prospects that I know of. He was taking a risk there. And to some people, I remember Howard Stern saying, how much he was a fan of Carol Burnett, and he hated Lyle for leaving the show there for a while, considering him persona non grata. How could you leave the show that's so nice and everything to him? But he made the move, and I think he could see it because, during that last season, there was the Mama's Family sketch going on. And there was no room for him in that sort of sketch, and it just seemed, a lot of things were going on the show that just didn't. He was kind of like a round peg going in a square hole, or a square peg going in a round hole. Sometime, whatever you consider the analogy there. And I think he just said, that's probably best, and let us do that. Now, when they did that, the following season, it was very up and down. In my opinion, the shows, because, and I think they realized they need to have someone on there, and they decide to get Tim in the following season there, because if you look at the 74, 75 shows, they use their guest stars more extensively than ever before. Some of them were like Alan Alda was nearly in everything when he did the show.
And of course, Steve Lawrence was on all the time by that point.
Steve Lawrence did a lot of that stuff. And it was a lot going on for the whole of it. I think I finally saw the one that had Wayne Rogers and Buddy Ebsen, and they were in almost every sketch. And in addition, Carol brought Wayne out for questions and answers too. So I'm like, wow, they're getting their money's worth for them. But I think it was a challenging time. Also during that season, that was when Vicky was pregnant, so she missed a few shows.
Right.
And
Now,
it was
was Tim ultimately who they wanted, or did they audition people? Like, were they auditioning Alan Alda along the way, or Steve Lawrence, or Ken Berry, or anybody that'd been on frequently? Or
they couldn't? Alan Alda had MASH at the time there. Most of the guest stars they had on 74, 75 were actually a lot of CBS stars. They had Gene Stapleton, Wayne Rogers, like I had mentioned, Buddy Ebsen, a whole slew of them. Telly Savalas, they had a lot of star power from other CBS stars there. I think they wanted Tim. I think they had wanted Tim because he was always got great reaction from the audience. He was a favorite of theirs whenever he'd show up.
Right.
And I think it came into Joe Hamilton's idea. It looks to me, I can't confirm, but it looks like what he thought was, okay, we'll add Tim, it'll cost us more, but if we just have one guest star on the show rather than two that we've been having, that can make up for the difference of it. And so that's what they did. So from Tim's show onward, they would never have more than one guest star, or the Pointer Sisters maybe count as one guest star,
right. Or Jackson 5, but I think they before Tim became a regular, but
they did. They were before and after Tim. Yeah, they did 2 appearances. Yeah.
So I have about 3 or 4 pages of questions. I haven't even asked one of them yet because we're just kind of jabbering. But this ties into what we're talking about because I know he was Tim Conway's partner. And one thing I saw, and a lot of these questions relate to the first 5 seasons because that's what I originally watched here recently.
Yeah.
So Tim Conway had a comedy partner for a time of Ernie Anderson, who later did join the show, and you could talk about that in a bit about being the new announcer and stuff like that, and also the Love Boat and all that, ABC and all that stuff. But I don't know if you watched the shows chronologically. Did you when you were doing your research?
I tried to, at least, I kept the notes in there as much as I did. I had to watch them wherever I could. But I tried to there at UCLA when I had them, and and there were UCLA had a good chunk of the first 5 seasons, but not all of them. As you could tell, as I've gotten the book, there are some that I didn't have there.
So if you watch the first season and maybe the second season too, she introduces Ernie Anderson like every week as a guy in the audience, and everybody's like, "Who?" I was like, "Who is this guy?" Now, like I said, Tim Conway did a couple comedy albums in the 60s. And so that's where I know him from earlier than, the Love Boat, like we're saying. And it's like, but was he known? Was he considered?
No.
Was he ever considered to be the original announcer before they hired Lyle?
No. He just came out there when Tim encouraged him to come out there. And they would have him in the audience. And it was kind of like a running gag. That kind of went sort of stale after a while, in my opinion. But
I'm surprised they never had them. Like they had little bit players that only appear like once or twice. Like even Bernie Popel, you mentioned, was in one skit just as an extra. It was like, I'm surprised he's right there. Why don't they have Ernie do something?
They did have Ernie do by the time when Lyle left. He started doing a few things.
I'm not
on
there
camera.
yet, but okay. Okay,
You'll
but then he was kind of a regular with the announcer there. So
exactly.
And did he, like I said, I haven't watched those ones yet. The season right after Lyle left, did Ernie immediately become the announcer, or did they have some fill-in ones?
Ernie did.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Right. He became that and everything, and that great voice of his.
So, and now I'm jumping to like the 5th season, but
sure,
I saw this. It's like, so and I'll tie it into what you're saying. So you're saying, they're trying to promote various CBS shows by having Telly Savalas and all these other people. But the interesting thing, and this is an episode you didn't really watch, but now you can see it on these things, is they had the episode with, I Tony Randall and
Jack Klugman.
Jack Klugman.
Yep.
Now, The Odd Couple was an ABC show. Why were they promoting an ABC show and trying to help it stay on the air?
Well, I think she was good friends with Tony and Jack, probably back to their days doing Broadway in the 1950s, you know, and live TV at the same time. And I think it couldn't hurt to have them on there as guests, and for what they had a kind of a big. They were having a Salute to Broadway was the show there that they had that going, so they just thought it would be a cute idea to have both of them on at the same time. And you know, it I don't know if it helped get Odd Couple a renewal or not. I mean, it was right on the bubble during that time, but I think it couldn't have hurt, you know.
But it's just odd that they're promoting, but they loosened up on those things in the 70s anyway, that you could cross networks and stuff.
Carol and Joe had enough clout that they were able to get some guest stars that other people would be like, I don't want to see, you know, this is Carol's favorite, you know, and she wants to have this person in there. She had a unknown singer who Carol saw on Broadway, I think maybe in Chorus Line or something, thought she had a great voice and had her on in 76. I can't remember her name, but I interviewed her and she was very nice, and, you know, saying that. But yeah, Carol had that clout that if she was able to do something, she had some stars on there that I wouldn't necessarily have on, you know, as much as she did. But that's, you know, it worked for her and made her comfortable there. You know, so that's why, you know, some of them came on several times. You know, they almost always had Bernadette Peters on every season too, you know, always Edie Gourmet. And so she did try and expand some over the years, but a lot of times it was one she was comfortable with. I think the show ended up having, even though it ran 11 years and nearly 300 episodes, there were only about a total of about maybe 200 guest stars total. Yeah. Which is not a lot.
But I think all shows do that. Like if you go through like the Dean Martin show, very few brand new, never been on the show before guests by 73, 74. I think Peter Sellers might have been one, you know, at the last there.
I think it's interesting. If you look at it, I think it's telling that a lot of the guest stars at one time had variety series. And I think Carol knew and kind of sympathized with them about, you know, it's even if they had bomb ones like Leslie Uggam or something like that, she's like, you know, let's put them on our show. They'll do just fine.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you about that because, you know, whether she tried to or not, she had 3/4 of the original regulars of your show of shows. Howie Morris being the one holdout, but he may have been too busy doing Andy Griffith's show or whatever.
Yeah, you know? She did have them. I think the one she admired a lot, she had Martha Ray on there a lot. I know she admired her, obviously an influence on her.
And then
at the time,
later, Sid Caesar had Caesar's Hour, which had Nanette Fabre, and she had Nanette Fabre like way too many times in the first few seasons. I think he said 13, you know,
12 or 13. Yeah. I was like, I was,
I mean, I think she can do a good job, but it's like, it was like way too often. I thought it's like, you know, did you know anybody else, you know?
I think there was that case. I think there might've been, even though I like Martha Ray, I thought, you know, having her on 2 or 3 times a season was a little bit too much for that way. And, you know, but again, it was what Carol wanted and what made her comfortable more than anything else. She did get, I think she kind of got it out of her system after the first 5 years, because most of the ones that we see in syndication, well, a lot of times the musical guest is cut out, you know, because of the 30-minute limit that they have there. But the musical guests went from Peggy Lee to Helen Reddy, the Pointer Sister, Jackson 5, you know, more contemporary. You know, Carol didn't really think that she had rock acts on there, but she at least had some contemporary singers on there that were better. Yeah, because the first 5 years, you're loaded up with Jack Jones, every middle of the road singer in the world is on there. And you're like, Pat Boone, and you're like, oh, come on, why? You know, and it was very telling there. I think I recounted in the book that I think Dionne Warwick doing Theme from the Valley of the Dolls, or one of her hits there, was about the only time you heard an artist singing a top 10 hit on the show until 72 when the Carpenters came on. Basically, I mean, that's basically the first 5 years they just were having on, Barbara McNair and other ones that you're just like, if you didn't, you'd either go who, or you'd be like, oh, I really don't care,
Right. It almost seems like Smothers Brothers, at least for their first kind of half season, was that way, and then they started bringing on the good stuff like the Who and Jefferson Airplane and stuff. But I think that initial season, it was that. So you think it's more of a mandate by CBS? You need like more middle of the road acts or something. You can't get so,
It may have been. I don't know to what extent.
Until
I
you're
know that
established.
Variety. I think when they were reviewing in 1974 her show with James Coco and the Pointer Sisters, the reviewer was like glad that she finally had a musical act that didn't attract, I want to say something like the rheumatoid demographics or something like that. I don't know if there was pressure per se, but I think it could be, she was raising 3 young daughters there too, and maybe they had a little bit saying like, Mom, can't you just put something on there that's we'd need
like
those.
to see.
Yeah.
They probably went to the top and said, can't you put Paul McCartney on there? It's like,
because the thing is, because the number of times he was on there, you think like Steve Lawrence was a major force on the charts, and he wasn't by then. He was even struggling just to get on the adult contemporary charts, but she liked him enough that she kept him on there long after his hit making days that were over.
That's an interesting thing, and I do have a question about it too. It's like, so Carol, I think, put out 1, maybe 2 albums during the course of the show's run, and then she had a couple albums prior to the show, and a couple with Julie Andrews and stuff like that. But the last kind of studio album she did came out around 71. And I think you said it charted at number 199. And it's like, Carol's not the best singer in the world, but she's not that bad. It's like, she's an interesting voice. I like her, and it seems like if you have like a weekly show, like even Sonny and Cher, the TV show helped their career a little bit on the charts, to get them kind of back on the charts and stuff. Why didn't it help Carol? And then it did help Vicky, at least on the one hit that she had. So.
Carol presented herself, more as a comedian than a singer. And often when she did do songs on the show, she also often did them in a comic vein, or, or if she was singing straight, it would be with another star. Right. That way. So I think that kind of gave people the persona of like, okay, she's not really serious about that, so there wasn't that, and she didn't really push it that much that I can tell, definitely not on the show, that she mentioned that she had it, but she didn't plug it every millisecond like some of them do.
I think the biggest plug she had in the show, I think she did sing a song from it, but I think the biggest plug is on one of the Q&As, an audience member had the album, say, can I get it autographed? And she said after the show or something. It's like, I would have brought her up. She brought everybody else up. It's like, but I guess she just kind of was self-conscious. Maybe she had just a contractual obligation to do one more album or something. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I've never explored that with her. I do know that with Vicky's situation, she had actually recorded a few singles prior to not Midnight Train. The Lights Went Out in Georgia. Know your Georgia tunes, Wesley.
Yes.
But Bobby Russell, her then husband, had written that, and they needed someone to sing a demo. So like Vicky's like, okay, I'll do it for you. They were aiming to get someone like Cher.
Right.
And Sonny Bono, in his infinite wisdom, said, oh no, you can't sing, Cher can't sing that, it's going to offend the South.
Yeah.
So then Vicky did it well enough, they thought, well, let's just go ahead and put it out with her. We got enough confidence in the song and do that.
Yeah.
And she sang it, and it was she did it on the Carol Burnett Show the first week when it debuted, all the way at number 100 on Billboard's Hot 100 thing, which usually is not a good position to start with, as anyone can tell. There've been like only about less than 10 songs that have gone from 100 to number 1 on there, but it did well enough, and broke first, ironically, in Georgia, was popular there, and it became a huge hit for her. Carol presented the gold record to Vicki on the last season show, I think of 72, 73. But with that success, that was the last big hit for Bobby Russell. And he and Vicki were starting to pull apart, and they divorced the following year, and her music career never really flourished after that, you know.
Now, was Carol jealous of that success that Vicki had?
Oh, I think she was thrilled with her
okay.
getting that way, you know.
I
think Carol knew that the music scene was not one that she could make records and get hits on right now. You know, there were very few of her contemporaries able to do that. You know, like she saw Steve Lawrence and the rest, you know, Edie Gourmet, that she thought was a great singer, was nowhere on the charts, you know, by the 70s. And, you know, it was kind of a fluke thing. I think they hoped that Vicki could continue her success, but it just wasn't meant to be.
Since we're talking about music, I know on all these shows, basically they cut them to 22 minutes in length. With some exceptions, and it's basically because of the music rights. So most of the music gets cut out, but sometimes they'll do something like, the earliest example is the Fun Family. They actually have the whole episode. They have them in two 22-minute segments. You know, all the other skits, and then the Fun Family has another show in this new syndication packages or streaming, whatever. What is the deal on music rights? I mean, it's like they have slipped through a few songs.
They slipped through basically the ones that they wrote for the show, like the Fun Family.
Right. But I mean, sometimes they slip through ones that are just legit songs performed by legit performers, because, well, there's not enough comedy in the show. We got to find 22 minutes somewhere. So.
Yeah, exactly. And
they pay for those more? How does that work?
Maybe some more, but remember, like I said, most of those weren't big hits, you know, so they're not hard to get. You know, Dionne Warwick was the only one that had the big hit during the first 5 years. So when you're seeing stuff on there, you know, it's like some of them, they had Bobby Gentry on, and she sang a song called Bugs. I'm like, you couldn't have her sing Ode to Billy Joe,
right?
Because you thought it was overplayed. You know, Carol even thought she has one of the biggest singles in the country right now, so we're going to have her sing her song Bugs. I was like, oh.
Well, was there any issue even way back when about music rights and stuff like that, or is that like
I don't think so. Not to the extent that, you know,
now.
Well, you know, it used to be that variety shows would just usually run once. And, you know, and during the summertime, like Carol's show usually did, they'd be off during the summer. So not too many of them be rerun, you know, so you wouldn't have to, that wasn't an issue. Carol's kind of, you know, set the exception to the rule by deciding to do Carol Burnett and Friend reruns daily starting in 77. And when they did that, yes, obviously the music rights would do that. And remember, Carol did a lot of those things. A lot of the musical numbers would be salutes to famous songwriters and everything. So you've got to deal with the people who own those catalogs, and getting that right, you know, is just not worth the effort sometimes for what they have. Sometimes it's, you know, using the actual songs from some movies, and they have that going away at the same time. It's a thorny matter. I'm just glad that we got the ones that we have of Carol's show most of the part, but I do miss, there are some of them that I wish I could see, you know, that some of them they didn't have at UCLA or some of the archives, and all I see is the edited version, and it just kills you, you know, like I wish I could have seen that finale, because it looks, you know, you see the costumes and the dancers and everything, you know, they had a great time doing it.
No, I've said this earlier, is the first time I saw a lot of those early shows is clips on the 10th anniversary show. And that's what got me all interested, you know, when I would see, you know, the Dennis sketch. That's where I saw it the first time. And what's another lovely story was one, and From Here to Eternity, and all these ones that were in the first 5 years, you know, you'd never see them on the Carol and Company. Now, what I originally thought was that Carol didn't like it that she was falling into Lyle's arms, and she was being a progressive feminist. And so I've said it. This is my commentary. she had to stick up her butt about the first 5 seasons because she didn't play well on them. She was more mature and independent on those later ones. Well, it turned out that was totally untrue, and that it really had to do with Bob Banner being co-owner on there.
Yeah.
And then I find out in your book he didn't do a damn thing. So what's the story on that?
He decided to pursue some other activities 5 years later. It was amicable, pretty much amicable, I guess I should say, parting between the two of them at the time. But because of that, because of the ownership situation, they had enough episodes by the 10th season, when they went to syndication, that they didn't need the ones with him. So they did that. And at the same time, Carol, I read an interview she said in Panorama magazine in 1980, where she said she didn't like how she looked and acted in some of the early shows and everything. So I really thought we're never going to see those live again, which is why I'm amazed and grateful that they were able to get the rights straightened out. And so they're now on Pluto TV and
sometimes, through Time Life, full episodes, so. I mean,
yes.
Now the video versions of some of the episodes that are in the first 5 seasons, or any of the seasons, is it just that because it's a subscription-based video thing for the most part, they figure people are willing to pay a little bit more to cover those music rights and other incendiary rights that might be in there?
Some of it is, but they still have the ones I've seen so far. They still have some of them edited. In the the first 5 seasons. I've seen a couple that are around 30 minutes or so there, and you can and they're very badly edited. I hate to say they do, slow crawls at the end there of the credits, trying to fill up stuff. They cut out some of the question and answer segments that begin the show, because she used to have at the beginning of the first season, she really had Q&A would take up the first 7 to 10, maybe 12 minutes of the show. It was that popular that people would do all these crazy things and have it happening on there. And it was a good opening there for what she had. So yeah, I've seen a couple of them where I'm like, that's a weird edit, but okay.
So when you were doing your research, and you said you went to UCLA for most of them, why were they missing him? Why didn't they have him?
I'm not sure what was going on, because I got the idea when I remember reading that Carol was donating a lot of them to UCLA. I don't know if they had them all. UCLA has a huge backlog of materials that they haven't been able to get processed and available for even reviewers to look at. They may have not had it all together, because we're talking 280 TV shows, of that alone, hour, and that's a lot to get together and have accessible for people to watch, even in a setting there. So I think that might have had an impact on what it had there at the time. But again, this is just pure speculation on my part, because I've not been able to talk to Carol and get the whole details.
Well, once they did get them available, even in the edited form, I mean, who had them, and where did they reside, and how did they get them out so easily once they kind of finally did it?
I think Carol had them. Joe was her husband there, and I think Joe's son kind of worked with Carol and trying to get the issues resolved, because he's credited on a lot of this work they're doing there. I don't know exactly where they had them in storage, but I'm sure they had it somewhere safe enough that even though some of the videotape may look a little worn and not the best, it's held up pretty well, I'd say, all in all, from what they have there at the time. There's a certain brightness level of some of the early color videotape shows that you notice, especially if you look on Rowan Martin Laugh-In. That one really kind of just couple of them you're like, ooh, I need to turn the contrast down or
Right.
something. You know?
One thing I noticed on watching old shows, and this is also shows like Hollywood Palace, even Ed Sullivan, and I think it's just the age of the camera being used is, you got the box, it's not widescreen like this show, and then the corners are starting to clip off with like this little rainbow effect, and then they switch cameras and it's not so pronounced, and it's like, so the ones that are more pronounced, I think, isn't it that camera's on its last legs, and they'll probably give that to college or something, and then they get a brand new camera. By 72, I noticed on the 6th season, either they cropped it better or the videotape was better, but they didn't. You don't see that much in the Carol and Company.
Yeah, it might have been both. By that time. So they got the hang of
it. In a lot of 60s shows, I said Hollywood Palace, that's where I first noticed it, when you get the widescreen or the big screen TVs, and it's like, what is that? Because they're going full scan all the way to the edge. That's the part that used to be cropped by the Class 2. It's
something else when they you look at the shows that way, but the content still holds up really well, I'd say, overall.
That's another thing is, it's kind of remarkable. Most of the quality of the shows, except for what I just said, there's not too many audio or technical glitches or anything like that. Were they recording these on like 2-inch tape, or what were they doing?
I believe so. Okay. I think that's what they've got them there. They would do what they call a dress show in the afternoon around 4:30 or 5. They would do one show and then break for dinner, and then do the I guess they call it tape show, the second one after that, and then they could combine both of those, elements of that to get things together. Sometimes, according to one of the editors on the show, sometimes there would be almost all shots in one sketch from one of the tapings, but then they'd insert something from the other taping, and unless you were really eagle-eyed, you wouldn't really notice a difference there. But he said there were some people who were like, I could tell this was from that one. He'd all hear from those pedantic types all the time in the industry, so you're like, whatever,
Now, during the course of the 11 years, was it basically done the exact same way like that?
Pretty much. There were some exceptions. They did go to England one time to promote the show being shown over there, and I think it was 1970 or so. That was an interesting show to watch, because you can tell that was different crew.
I didn't even know that existed. I knew the Australian show, and I think I knew they did a New York show, but the
New York show with David Frost and everything. So it was very adventurous on how they did that. And sometimes they would go out. The most famous one was probably their incredible musical one, where they did Carol and Edie Gourmet did a tribute to singing a medley of Hollywood hits, and they ended with them singing "Hooray for Hollywood" with the Hollywood sign behind them, and they had it on camera. It was like incredible. It was obviously filmed and inserted that way. There was also when they did the parody of Esther Williams movies, Carol. They filmed Carol swimming in a neighbor's pool there for that bit, and because they couldn't do that on the set, obviously.
Now, did they use that same footage later? Because I think that appeared. Okay, so I've seen it already. It was like on the 3rd or 4th season.
That appeared in their spoof of That's Entertainment. That was one of their. They were like, we can recycle that. So
because I didn't know. I mean, now I know. That it was supposed to be an Esther Williams film, and then she actually sang, "Baby It's Cold Outside" with the original singer, Ricardo Montalban. It's like, I never knew they did that. That's cool. And that song actually did make it onto these edited cuts, so at least that was presented. So I'm happy about that. So now on all these different shows, like the New York, London, and Australia ones, I mean, obviously those cost more money to do, but was there a reason why they stopped, after so long? I think the Australian one was the last one, and that was in 73, right?
I think for both the Australian and the United Kingdom one, they were doing that to boost the sales in those countries, and those were pretty adventurous. I have to be honest. I think by the last season, um, Joe Hamilton was just not there as not what they needed as the executive producer of the show. I think he just kind of like, let's do this as the least amount of trouble possible. Let's just do this stuff. He and Carol had been going to Hawaii a lot during that year, during their time off from the show. They would reference it on the Q&A. Oh, we just got back from Hawaii, how wonderful it was. At the same time, that was when Carol's daughter started to get into drugs. Everyone I know said, no, that didn't play effect in the show at all. But I kind of wonder if it might have in their own personal lives, with them kind of getting the focus off of what they needed at the time there. It did seem to me like I really think Joe was really let down the ball in the last season there. It was not as expansive as what they had in previous seasons.
Is that the 11th season with Dick Van
Yeah.
Dyke?
Yeah.
Okay. One thing I noticed also is, just watching those first 5 seasons, and we'll get to the end of this run too, but a lot of running gags kind of started in the first 5 seasons that were very firmly established. Like we mentioned, Vicky's dumb girl voice. So, And then I noticed they started As the Stomach Turns pretty early on, but they didn't do the part that always got a laugh, and even from me, dropping the baby into the umbrella stand until about the 3rd or 4th one, and then it was always in there. And then of course the infamous Mother Marcus, which by the time I started watching the show, it seemed like Harvey was doing that every week. It probably wasn't, but, you know what I mean.
It was a guaranteed laugh getter. There were a lot of them that there were a lot that they had there that hung around for a while. She played the Girl Scout cookie salesman who conned a lot of people. That went for a couple years into the mid 70s. Harvey and Carol playing the old folks in rocking chairs. That one lasted again until Tim took over and joined the show. The most enduring one was, though, As the Stomach Turns was the one sketch that lasted all 11 seasons. And
the ones that kind of surprised me that I'm seeing in these early seasons, kind of like, and I forgot the name of the characters, but it's basically like a riff on Honeymooners, and it's like Harvey and Carol, but it's not very good, and they did it many
It's
times.
not. And when their original head writer left in 72, they wisely dropped that combination of them. There was some there. I think one of the writers, I can't remember which one, I've got it in the book, but by the 5th season, their head writer, and again, I've lost the name, I should be doing this better than that. He was repeating a lot of their stuff. Yes, he was repeating a lot of their stuff. And it was the point where Carol said she was seriously thinking about ending the show. Because she and Harvey were just like, we're going to redo this again, and we came every 2nd or 3rd show. Let's do this sketch that we did a couple of years ago.
This was in 72. She was thinking.
71, 72. Because he had just seemed to have lost any inspiration, was running things to the ground. And so Carol, that was a year Carol fired him and a lot of the writers, and of course that's the year when the show finally won the Emmy for best writing. Go figure. That's
it's interesting. I read that before. Now I've seen the season. There's moments in that season, but it shocked me the first time I read that they would repeat segments. I mean, I get it, they didn't expect these things to have a syndication life or anything, so why not repeat skits from a few seasons before? But it wasn't a matter of repeating segments. Like there's a few skits they repeated from I'm forgetting, Gary Moore and Durwood Kirby. But that made sense because they were on the show again. Why not redo it in color in a new show? But to redo sketches that actually just appeared 2 or 3 seasons before, that arguably probably everybody saw.
And then I didn't see it until they've got it out now with that Batches, but that was a season where when Tim was a guest, Carol just repeated the Dennis sketch with him and
Yeah.
Harvey. They didn't restage it. They just reran the whole sketch that had been on there 2 years earlier. I mean, that's how lazy the show had gotten there. You know, I'm like, you're going to do that. So what? Tim appears in what, 1 or 2 sketches, and that's it. You know,
Yeah.
it was
Interesting.
yeah, it was tough there. And the I don't know if you saw it there, but the penultimate show of that season with Paul Lynde and Karen Black.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, that was one of their worst.
Yeah.
Even the 30-minute version. I've heard it's even worse in the hour long, because Stan Mason, one of the dancers there, told me that Karen Black had a musical number and she kept on bickering with the director. She's like, Dave, you got me in the shot? Is this right? You know, and everything. And of course, when it came time to do her number on the air, she was missing her mark and all the stuff. And it was apparently was a mess.
Well, like that one, like most of them 30-minute episodes or 22-minute episodes, I should say. Karen Black's only appearances on the closing credits, so she doesn't really
exactly. Yeah, she didn't do it, but the ones that they had there, they had Paul Lynde basically redoing what he played a year earlier as a insurance salesman who was really friendly to Carol and Harvey. And then when they had a disaster, he's like, what happened here? I don't know, you people, you know, that type of thing. It was basically the same thing, but not as well done.
Now, do you think somebody like him didn't continue the show because of that? Because he did other variety shows, like he was on Donnie and Marie's show all the time in the late 70s. So
yeah, well, he did after 7172, he had the Paul Lynde show on ABC, and it was running opposite Carol's show there at the time there, you know. So
because I thought in general he did a pretty good job, even with the skit.
Yeah.
You know, he always turned in a good performance, you know, like
he did. John Biner did. I talked to John Biner, and John was like, he said he never was offered a regular guest shot, and he said he was fine being a guest star there, but he would have been just fine. He was one of the best on the show there. He really got the comic senses going.
And I'm amazed some people that only appeared once, you know, like Dom DeLuise, you know, it's like, really, just once, you know. It's like, I get it if they weren't very good, but you know,
Toady Fields appeared.
Toady Fields
she
was excellent. Great. Yeah, this is one time too. I was like, what you know, what's happening here?
And you're like, why did you only do it one time? You know, I don't get that, you know. And a lot of them, I know they want to do their, I think Phil Silvers said in an interview he thought it was one of the best shows. And when he watch his show, I don't know if, I hope they haven't hooked ending credits, but if you watch it, during the end, he gives Harvey Korman a little push on the tush, I guess you'd say, patting him on the butt there. Once I'm like, wow, I didn't know. That's kind of out there for 74, you know, kind of being familiar with
that one again. I mean, I've seen it before. I know what you're talking about.
Because, but he you know, there was a lot of there was a lot of good people on there that I thought should have been on there more often too.
Was it partially due? I know you said Paul Lynde got a show, so you know that excuses him. But was part of it due to that overall laziness? Like after they got the rights to their own show without Bob Banner, the kind of the laziness settled in. It's like, oh, we can always have Steve Lawrence, we can always have Ken Berry, we can always, you know.
Well, with some of that, but too, they also had. I think for some of them, I don't know if they knew what they could do with them beyond a guest shot sometime, you know, like when oh gosh, I'm gonna hate myself for forgetting it. Rita Hayworth, when Rita Hayworth did the show, you know, she did a great job and everything, and they were mocking her, but you know, they basically did everything that they could, you know, with Rita playing herself, and
that's a little different. That's kind of like Saturday Night Live when you have the big guest star, you know. We'll use Betty White as an example. You're not going to have her every week, even if she was a lot younger. It was like you have her in for the reason you have her in, and that's it. You know, if you do an encore, it's kind of redundant and superfluous and all that.
And I think too, Carol also wanted to be surrounded with people that I think she knew would not be make waves, you know, be pretty easy to handle. There were a lot of times you look there, if you watch the show, I think you'll see it a couple of times where people ask her, when are you going to have Raquel Welch on? We think it'd be hilarious to have you. No, and I think it's partly because Raquel had that reputation of being really opinionated and everything. And I think Carol would have been like, I don't want that on the show, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
Pretty much if there was someone really bad on the show, that may have played a factor of her going like, we're not going to have them back on here.
Right.
They're not here to have fun and be fun with us.
But it also seems like this, and we already discussed this a little bit, it just seems more reliance on the family only because they got to be so good. Like, a question I was going to ask you about is who did the animation for the opening titles? But before you answer that, I will say the first 3 seasons, they have a very simple animation of her as the charwoman, and the CBS falls on the ground and it turns out to be Carol Burnett Show. Hey, clever.
Yep.
But no mention of Harvey, no mention of Lyle, no mention of Vicky. Then
Yep.
the 4th season, they change it and they have like these little rooms open up with, and then she mops them all off the wall. But at least now they're getting mentioned, but it took till the 4th season for that to happen.
Yeah.
So was it like, oh, these people are kind of interchangeable, they could leave, we don't know. And then by the 4th season, okay, I think Harvey's here to stay.
Yeah, I think they, it might have just been oversight, may have been contractually obligated by some of them. I don't know to what extent they had in terms of doing the titles, like the thing they had on Gilligan's Island during the first season,
right,
where they said and the rest,
Carol and the rest. Yes.
Yeah.
But do you know who did the animation for those
I've
shows?
got it in the book somewhere.
Okay.
Whoever the person is passed away or was no longer active, because when they'd done the reunion specials, they had someone else do it, and it looked really, I didn't like the way they did it there. It was like a sort of a 3D version, but
it was the same person doing it all along. So
yeah,
even on that,
I believe
Carol
so.
Burnett
even on the Carol
Friends?
Burnett and Friends,
Okay,
it was the same one there that you can find doing it at the time there.
And I know they don't show this on these cut versions, but they have like slides with like more to come or the second half or something like that.
They have a couple of them on there. I've seen them on some of the shows. They have that, and some of them even kept like the promo sponsor that Lyle is announcing for them, which is kind of unusual. So
it just seems like there's kind of 3 distinct phases of the show, kind of like seasons 1 through 3, 4 to 6, and then 7 to 11, kind of in a certain way, and I don't know where I'm going with this. It's just like, did they kind of change it up partially? Well, I know Lyle left, but I mean, just partially just to kind of see how long we can make this thing go.
Well, the thing is, the show always got, like Carol said, it did have one season where it looked like it was going to be near the top 10. I think its highest rating was number 13 in the 69-70 season on Monday nights. It still was good. I mean, it was still a regular top 20, top 30 show on Saturday nights easily. There was part of it was, if you look back, you're like, well, ABC made some stupid programming decisions opposite. You're like, who the heck wanted to watch Owen Marshall at Saturday nights or anything? All these other areas they had there. But yeah, it basically, like you said, from 73 on, they had pretty much the same head writer and everything was going there. It was relatively stable. They did have a couple new writers join in 77, 78, but I wouldn't blame the show being canceled because of the writings. I think, some of it, but I think some of it was Joe Hamilton still trying to make the show into what it was without Harvey Korman being there. And the show, by then, it was the 11th season. It was on opposite Love Boat, which was younger and fresher and everything. And it really didn't have the same spark without Harvey there. It just seemed like it was going backwards from its comedy. It was repeating some stuff. There was one point in the 11th season where they did their 3rd spoof of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde during their 3rd salute to MGM Pictures. I mean, that just tells you right there, we're running out of ideas. you know.
Yeah, so it's kind of like 71, 72 again, but now
Yeah.
you have double the amount of episodes, so yeah, why not hang it up? I
Yeah.
suppose.
And by then, I mean, by then, almost every, you know, classic movie they parodied by that time.
Right.
You know, you do by 280, you know, if you're just doing movies that were hits in the 30s and 40s, well, there's only a finite amount that most people recognize or, you know, would want to make fun of, you know. So
I don't know if you interviewed him, but I just interviewed him yesterday, and this is my surprise.
okay.
So I interviewed Dick DeBartolo from Mad.
Yes,
and,
I've interviewed
and
him,
I
yes.
interviewed him yesterday, and I asked him because Larry Siegel, Stan Hart, and Ari Kogan, who also wrote for Mad, worked on Carol Burnett Show. So
Yep.
I said, why didn't you work on Carol Burnett Show? You worked at Match Game, to tell the truth. You were in the industry. And he revealed, yeah, I was going to do it, but it was going to be for the 12th season.
Oh my gosh.
Did you know that?
I did not know that.
I didn't know it
now.
either. So that's what my revelation is to you. And he told me that yesterday. And he said, so had there been a 12th season, he would have signed on to be one of their writers.
Now,
And
you know, Stan Hart and Larry Siegel, they were the head writers in the 72-73 season.
Right.
And they had some of the best shows, I think, of all time, of the Carol Show, but they ran into some of the other the guys who were serving as producers of the show at the same time. And I talked to all four of them to make sure I got all of their perspectives. And I think it's really interesting chapter in my book when I do that. But basically there was enough tension going on there that everybody either left or was fired from the show at the end of the season. And the Hart and Siegel never worked together professionally after that as well. Neither did the other two gentlemen. It was kind of a sad state of affairs going on that way. But that happens, you know.
I'm working on a Mad book, which is why I interviewed Dick, but I also love Dick, so I wanted to talk to him anyway. But it was my excuse to talk to him. The other thing I asked him, and he revealed it, is like, besides the 12th season thing, was just working on all those different TV shows and everything that he worked on. He was very gracious and everything like that. I'll have it up in a couple weeks.
I talked with him about for the Betty White book. I think you know that, for especially because he did that parody of Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. That was hilarious, and some other stuff he had there working with her.
So let's see. Now, one of the things, I guess, is like, so we've talked about you had missing episodes because of UCLA. In fact, I emailed you about this when I said there was one episode you said it may not even exist, and then we find out it does. So,
yes.
But I don't know if you've done any further research on it, but it's the October 13, 1969 episode that Scoey Mitchell, comedian, and Bobby Gentry, ode to Billy Joel again. And apparently it does exist, but you were saying it didn't air in the original run. It might have been a summer repeat, but did you investigate further on that, or it wasn't a summer streaming?
I don't think it ran at the time. I do not know. There was some kind of, according to my source there, when I was trying to find get copies, who had a lot of audio copies of old Carol Burnett shows. He said, according to this ratings summary thing that he had, that it was preempted by some news special or something that happened. Something must have happened. I don't know. I do not know. I've looked at the newspapers and I'm like, what happened? It didn't seem like there was anything ordinary with any kind of problem with the space shuttle or anything, and nothing stood out. But apparently he said, it's not available because of that. So
election year, wasn't Olympics. No. Nothing. Yeah.
No. So it might have, I'm wondering, it may have aired in some time slots and maybe not some others. And, and they just didn't have it at whoever had it at the time there. But it's another weird episode because
I mean, it's nothing to get excited about, other than the fact that you said it may not exist, and here it suddenly is. And so but I didn't know, and I did ask you about this, but you kind of say no, is, like in the Smothers Brothers show in their third season, they had episodes didn't air,
Yep.
like the one with Harry Belafonte is a notorious one. It didn't air till the 90s when he.
See, now I don't know if it is interesting because on that one, that Scully had a monologue about doing drugs or something on there, which
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not a Carol Burnett Show type comedy.
Right. And I'm wondering if that could have made it got pulled, but you have no way to
I don't
find out,
know.
so.
I
mean,
don't know
Scully's
either.
still around. Can you?
Yeah, but he doesn't talk to anybody.
Oh, he doesn't talk to anybody. Okay.
I mean, he and Bobby Gentry, I'm like, those are two of the biggest show business recluses right now. I think there was a whole thing where a reporter tried to finally track down where she was. I think she's somewhere in Tennessee living now, and she just refused to talk to him.
Huh.
And it's been both of them have not done an in-depth interview. I don't even think even in this century, from what I can tell. I mean, they both really have fallen off the thing, which is unusual because you saw them all over television in the late 60s and early 70s.
Yeah. I mean, Scully I saw on Rhoda. That was where I think I first.
And he did Match Game and some of the other things. And and then you're like, I don't know, something happened there. Just decided not wanting to talk.
It's just sad because like those two are on that show. Maybe they'd have some sort of insight about it.
That's what I was hoping.
And Carol probably wouldn't remember because it's just a blur. It's like it was one of those episodes. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what happened. That happened then. I don't know. Yeah, that could easily.
I mean, she may remember, but who knows?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, it's she didn't make any reference to it in her book on the show. So
right. And I know you did not interview Carol or any of the regulars for your book, but have you talked to any of them before or since, just even in casual conversation?
I had not gotten able to talk to Tim or Lyle before they passed. I've not been able to talk to Carol or Vicky otherwise. Carol's publicist did know. I did tell her I was doing a book and request an interview, and she's flatly told me no, which is unusual from a lot of people I've heard, but Carol has a different publicist than what she had previously. So that may have played a factor in it. And that it may be because that was around the time when Carol was doing her own book on the show. Yeah. So getting it together. But my opinion was, I talked to everyone else outside the cast. The cast had pretty much had said their own pieces and they've had their own books, all except Lyle. And Lyle's or his representative, I can't remember, just said no, he has no interest in talking to you. Okay, so I just go with what I had there, and I think it's pretty informative that way because you get a lot of, especially because I talked to a lot of the writers. They had kind of the inside skinny,
I mean, you talked to a lot of guests. So I was like, wow,
yeah,
I don't even know if I bothered to talk to this person. They were only on one show, but I mean, you look.
But they remember doing the show very well, because it was a very nice show to do. Carol treated them well and, showcased their talents very nicely. So, I was able to get most of them, except for a couple of them that I can't remember various reasons, sometimes some turned it down because it wasn't an official Carol Burnett thing. And, how it is. Some of them just come up with stuff. So you're like, okay, I'll just go on without you. There was one, I won't say who, but the spouse of that person requested that I pay some money to interview that person, and I said
that's tough. I mean, like when I did my first total television book, I mean, I was trying to get Larry Storch, and there's an agent. I don't really think it was a real agent, just some sort of representative for him that wanted me to cough up some dough for like 2 questions, and it's like no, I can't do that. And it wasn't a small amount of dough either.
I know. I've heard from 1 or 2. And you wonder about, I feel like asking these people, do you know that these representatives for you are asking for this and they're making you look bad, so.
Now it ended up working okay because later I did a DVD set and some, Wally Winger, whatever his name is, the announcer on, I think it was on the Tonight Show, or is he on with Leno? Is that his name? Wally Wingard? Is that
no, that's
or was he on?
I know you're talking
Anyway,
about
he interviewed Larry Storch on the DVD set, so I probably got the answers to my questions indirectly. But you know how that is. It's like, well, I won't get it from this source, but I'll get it from this source.
Yeah, there was a really good, like I said, the Panorama magazine, which didn't last long, but I somehow in my wisdom kept it, and it had a really good in-depth interview with Carol in 1980 about her show and what was going on, and had a lot of good quotes that I got from it. And plus I was able to watch her do some stuff on the Tonight Show and Dick Cavett and so on there, and interesting quotes that I could use about the show from her perspective. So that's nice. It's all, I think that adds to a flavor to a book. You're like, oh, he got her on the Tonight Show, and there she is in the magazine.
Over the years, were there any true friction or fights between the cast members?
There was one in the book. Carol talks about it when I think it was in '72. There was one show where Harvey was being really nasty, and and Tim didn't realize it when they talked about it later on. But she said it was a show where Tim was a guest along with Petula Clark, so nice people. But Carol said he was just there. And at the end of the show, when they're saying goodbye, she looks like she's shooting daggers from her eyes. She just gives them like the cold, like this. You don't notice it until you're looking for it there. And you're like, ooh, there's something going on there. And then after that show, she said she did her best Joan Crawford thing and told them, all right, Harvey, we'll let you off the show. It's like, what? She's like, yeah. It's like, I don't want you to be here and have this attitude going on. It's like, no, I want to stay on the show. And she said, well, if you are, you're going to be here. I want to see you have fun and enjoy things, and don't leave your issues outside this, and get it together. And so the next morning, when the next weekend, when it came back Monday, the elevator door opened and Harvey got out, and Carol was there in front of him, and he twirled around dancing and everything to indicate, I'm fine, I'm good.
Didn't they also give him a sign that said "Happy Go Lucky Harvey" or something to that effect on his dressing room door? And
there was one Q&A where someone said, what's Harvey Korman really like? He said, oh, he's the same easygoing guy you see on here. And you hear the crew and everybody laughing their heads off. I mean, Harvey was a worrier, but he was really committed to the show and wanted to have the excellence in it there. And and I think he really invested it. The shows without him really are lacking very much the special spark that he provided there. He was a great foil for Carol. He could sing, dance, do comedy, make a character very believable and wacky, just everything you needed in a second banana.
Now, did Carol ever have any friction with Vicky? Wasn't she when Vicky got pregnant, wasn't there some friction there, or no?
No, that was Joe giving friction. Joe was saying, okay, you're starting to show, so we can't have you on here, we're gonna do that. And she was like doing that, and then Carol kind of lobbied, said, can't we have Vicky back on it? I'm missing her. So they had an episode where Mama supposedly fell and got herself injured. So they had a lot of blankets on her as she was in a wheelchair and everything. So that hid that. And then Vicky came on at the end of the 74-75 season. You could see she was very pregnant, and did a couple of numbers with Carol.
That's why I ask you all these things, if there's jealousy or anything. So it sounds like in general they got along and still do, I suppose.
Yeah. I think they really do. I heard Vicky supposedly was telling Carol recently how broken up she was about Betty White passing, because they did Mama's Family together. And in fact, Betty did the Carol Burnett Show 3 times, and she was playing Ellen's, the mean sister of Carol's character on that. Did a great job. Betty's shows, all 3 of them were great. She was great for that show. She like I said, know how to sing and dance and have fun and deliver her lines great. So
then I have to ask you about this. So it's like the 11th season is very weird with Dick Van Dyke. He's only on there like 10 episodes, so it's not even on the full season. But I watched those originally, and I was thinking, what's going on here? Why are they doing this? It seemed very awkward. And Dick Van Dyke had appeared like a year before or something, and it was very different. It's like, uh, why did they have this need to kind of change it up with Dick Van Dyke and not keep it the way it was in that one episode in '76?
Well, with Harvey leaving, I think they needed someone there. They thought we needed someone, who's a big draw to somebody. Dick and Carol had worked well together. They were doing theater and live TV back in the 50s, in New York. So they knew each other for a long time. Dick's show had won the Emmy for Best Comedy Variety Series, even though it lasted, a couple of months on NBC.
Van Dyke
so they were thinking,
or something.
Yeah, Van Dyke and Company. So they thought, okay, he's a hot property. If we give him there, we'll give him co-star billing and make it like that. Unfortunately, doing that, you've got to refashion how you're going to be doing the show, and they didn't really do that to his talents. They basically plugged him in there to be like a replacement for Harvey. Dick felt out of sorts. One of the writers or dancers has said they felt by the third show Dick was already not feeling well and like, I want to get out of this. This is not right. This is not working for me here. He stuck through 12 shows, just left unceremoniously. Didn't do that. It was really, it was not a good mix there going on there. There was a lot of dynamics going on at the same time. I think with Harvey leaving the show, it really kind of indicating a passing of an era on the show of what it was and had been. And that last season was maybe 1 out of every 4 shows was good.
I still enjoyed it, but then I haven't watched them again recently.
Yeah.
But it's funny. One of my favorite episodes is like totally near the end of the run. And it's probably due to the guest, which was Steve Martin. That's like
yes,
one of my
that
favorite
was one
episodes.
of their best ones. That was Steve Martin and Betty White. That was like that was the best episode.
I love his dog act. I love the beach blanket bingo parody. I can't remember all the thing. Oh, the as the stomach turns with the
Betty and
the Close Encounters.
Yeah. See, that was all that, but but everything else was just like, there was one time, how they did the recurring bit where Carol would be a housewife and she would be besieged by people from commercials coming up and doing their little routines on her, which was always funny. They did that, and it was just like, it was the first one where I was like, this is not funny. This is not working. That's why I'm going to
rewatch all these, because they don't there's a lot of those 11th season ones, especially the ones with Dick Van Dyke, that are not on home video. So
and there's a reason why.
Was there any friction with like other, we talked about Carol with all the different ones. Oh, also, did you interview Dick Van Dyke about this or no?
No, I did not. Okay. But I did get his comments in his autobiography, and he mentioned it briefly on a Museum of Television and Radio interview seminar that I saw.
So he admitted he had trouble with the show.
Yeah, he's he in more or less. Yeah, he just said he.
Obviously, Tim and Harvey worked together and probably didn't have much friction. What about Tim and Vicky?
Tim and Vicky did fine. It's just I think Vicky got a little exasperated with Tim going off script, and that's when she did that one time.
Yeah, well, that's what made me ask that. I mean, it's like there's one thing to kind of keep it under wraps when you're acting, but then behind the scenes, like almost like she's sick of it anyway. But that was the last straw.
Yeah, well, she was informed between the shows. He did one story about the Siamese elephants.
Right.
And then the first one was about was it that the elephant and the trainer were lovers? The other one was the Siamese elephant.
Yeah,
I think the first one
is supposedly the one that got that's the blooper reel one.
Yeah.
Although
that was the second one. That was the second show. Yeah, when she was doing that, and she was informed that they said Tim's story is going to change in that one. And she's like, God, I can't just, oh, I don't want to, why does he do this? And so her husband, who was a makeup artist on the show, said, well, why not get back at him? Do something like that. So that's when she, released the line about, are you sure this little blank is
right?
Shut up, finish.
I'll say it.
Yeah.
This little asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it floored everyone,
Yes. Yeah. And people mistakenly say that was Harvey Korman, but it was Dick Van Dyke over.
Yeah, because he's barely
saying,
in. You've barely seen him that much, and it looks like it there. So yeah, I mean, he was playing a guy who rented the something there. Yeah, because they had to write off Harvey Korman as leaving Eunice, which sounds like a laugh riot, doesn't it?
Right.
So yeah. But other than that, I think everyone, there's no big things that I saw, heard from any of the dancers or the writers or anybody like that. There was some friction with some of the writers sometimes.
Yeah.
There was.
I think they even say that on some of the interviews, like with Buzz Coleman on some of the DVDs. I think they kind of allude to that, not gratuitously, but a little bit.
Bob Schiller and Weisskopf, who were the big guys behind I Love Lucy and everything, they were doing the show some in 1970, and they couldn't get their ideas accepted there, so they left it and they went to the Flip Wilson show, and they won Emmys for the work that they were rejected for doing for Carol's show. That happens sometimes. There's just some ego trips going on with some of the writers and how they get them together on the thing. So and there was also too some other areas, the music conductor Harry Zimmerman, they had to fire him after 4 seasons because he was missing some cues and everything, and his music style was kind of old style itself, so it helped them get Peter Matz. Peter Matz, yeah. And that was a good choice, to get to a more contemporary style in there. And I think that was, that wasn't necessarily a controversy. They kept that very quiet there, but Harry Zimmerman had such a low profile. He died like 6 years later and didn't get an obituary mention in Variety. That's how obscure he'd become during the time. So even though he'd done a lot of radio and TV conducting.
So had the show gone on one more season, I mean, and also let me ask you this, considering what Dick DeBartolo said, was it kind of originally planned, let's go one more year, and then did they change their mind, or was Carol always adamant, we're done, no Harvey, we're done?
Carol kind of shocked everyone. According to Carol, she said, she asked them if they were planning to renew the show for a 12th season, and CBS said yes. And she said, well, thank you, but I think we're going to end it this season. That she had there. The show had moved in the middle of the season from Saturday nights at 10 to Sunday nights at 10, where the ratings actually went up some. But it was not anything near where it was at the time there. I think everybody knew if it was going to continue, it would have to have some overhauls big time. And it, plus CBS saying that, yes, we would renew it, doesn't mean they'd renew it for a whole season. Sure. It means they could have done, I'm sure she saw what had happened before, where some long running shows like Bonanza, Ironside, Rhoda, they were all canceled in the middle of their season, even though they had long runs because the ratings had dropped so low. Yeah. And I'm sure she was like, I don't want to see that happen to our show where we're canceled and I don't have time to do a farewell show and get things together, So that did it again. I don't know if things in the personal life may have been affecting there too at the same time. But yeah, by then, I mean, and let's face it, by 1978, the comedy variety was pretty much dying on TV, you know.
Although I tried to watch everything, you know, I watched Donnie Marie, I even watched
But
Barbara
they only
Mandrell,
had
Shields and Yarnell, Captain and Tennille. I'd watch all those things. I love the variety format.
But Donnie Marie would be off the following season. No show would really last a year. I think maybe Barbara Mandrell and the Mandrell sisters lasted 2 years, you know, and never was a big hit.
Dolly had one, Dolly Parton.
1 year with her.
You know,
if Dolly Parton
Smothers Brothers tried again like the late 80s and only lasted a year or so. So it's unfortunate, but it's really expensive to do that stuff, I guess, to do it right.
It's expensive. It costs a lot, you know, it takes a lot of writers to get things, you know. Look at the writing credits on Saturday Night Live right now. That's ridiculous. You know,
I'm surprised that keeps going, but I guess as long as Lorne Michaels in charge, it'll probably keep going. But
as long as Lorne Michaels has got NBC's main programmer they've got there.
Right. You know, I know you usually hear bad mouthing NBC most of the time. So he owns their late night, you know, everything he's got with Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers and all that stuff. And so that's a different situation by itself. I was thinking when I was doing the book, I was like, well, maybe I'm going to mention something here about how the show affected or competed with the Saturday Night Live. It really didn't. I mean, it was a different kind of. The only thing I ever knew about it is Lorne Michaels used to say, and he probably didn't say it later on because of Jimmy Fallon not being host, being a cast member, is like, we're not going to do Carol Burnett. We're not going to crack up in sketches and everything. We're going to be professional. But you know, Jimmy Fallon threw that out the window years later. So
exactly. But you know, I think Carol was kind of more in her own world. The writers said they did watch some of the other competing variety shows, and maybe Carol did too, but I don't know to what extent she did. I don't think you know, there were probably some that just didn't connect that much, or you know, maybe said that's not my style, or you know, the show was just its own creation. You know,
had they gone on 12th, or even were there any discussions for replacement for Dick Van Dyke, or they just said we'll just continue with who we have?
Dick Van Dyke, all they did, they had a couple more times with Steve Lawrence and Ken Berry a couple of times there.
But do you think either of them, had they gone in 12th season, might become a regular in name?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if
I know it's all speculation because
because I don't know. I think they really weren't certain on who they were writing for and how they were writing for it. It was not, to me, it was not coherent writing. They introduced some new recurring segments that just didn't resonate with me in that last season, and I don't know where they would go, if they would continue them, why they would continue some of them. They were just not really funny and amusing that much to me. I mean, it's hard to speculate for me.
Of course, here's another weird speculation, but I doubt it would have happened. But possibly Harvey coming back, since he did come to the Tim Conway show, Tim, you know, like a year later, you know, and even Carol guested on that, you know, which I always thought was kind of bizarre. Even Carol did like a short-lived summer series in '79 too, which was kind of bizarre. It's like they didn't want to let this thing go, which
I know.
As a fan, I was thrilled. I was like, do more, you know. But it's like, I think
Harvey would not have come back. I think Harvey was a little tired, honestly, from having done, by the time he left, you know, remember he'd been doing Danny Kaye from '63 to '67, so he'd been doing sketch comedy nonstop for 14 years in a row on TV, and that's gotta wear on you even after you've even no matter how much you're compensated or whatever, you know. He did have a chance, as Chris Korman pointed out, he did have a chance to be the lead on The Love Boat, but he just thought he didn't want that, you know. I mean, think about if he did that, my gosh, that would have been what, another 8 or 9 years as a regular, and you know, that might have really made him financially secure, but I'm not sure emotionally it would have been doing that, you know.
No. Granted, he did Mel Brooks films, but
Yes.
wasn't a major film star. But I mean, Blazing Saddles, High Anxiety, History
Yep.
of the World are not anything to really sneeze at. Maybe the
Yep.
last one, but anyway, it's like I like him in both those roles, in
Yep.
High Anxiety and Blazing Saddles, and it's like, did Chris ever talk about Harvey continuing on in movies, or was that just like as a favor to Mel, or did you not discuss that?
Harvey did do that. He also had some other interests and everything. Harvey got to the point there, I think it was when he was doing I think it was the one with Valerie Perrine where they were playing a married couple.
Dick and something, or
Dick and
whatever.
Dora or something. I can't remember that. Yeah.
Beverly Hills or something like that.
In 1986. Yeah.
George Burns comedy something review or something.
And where it was being taped out and everything was some far location that he had to drive into and everything. And he was just like, why am I doing this to myself? I don't need this. I don't want this. So he only did one more series after that. Well, that was because it was Mel, the Nut House, with Cloris Leachman, because he knew Mel and knew how to work that. But otherwise, he kind of just took it easy.
Wonderful Star Wars holiday special.
Yeah. but he was basically, by the 90s, he was like semi-retired and fairly happy with what he did there. He do some stuff with Tim sometimes on the road.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But I don't think I'm not sure they could have paid him enough money to have him come back for the 12th season there. And I'm not sure, even if they did, if audiences would come back to see it by that time, because it's very hard. Any comedy is very hard to sustain into 12 seasons and beyond. Look at maybe, I think there's probably no more than 10, 15 that in the history of television that lasted 12 seasons or more, and by that time, like the cast of MASH.
Now, I mean, now is kind of fluky time. You'll have like CSI or
but that's drama. That's drama.
Oh, okay, I see. Comedy.
I'm saying for sitcoms.
Yeah.
By that time, you're either you've outgrown your original premise, and you're going off in different tangents, and some of the time it's weird. And like when I remember the cast of MASH held a vote about whether to do an 11th season, and then the numbers, there were more saying yay than nay. So that's what it was. And that was the one they decided to do it. But by then, several of them, I think Alan Alda, some were like, we're running dry. We've got nothing. I don't want to be doing this when, it's going to go crazy. And Harvey noted that too when he left in 77, not only because of career opportunities, but he said, he felt like it was getting creatively dry there too at Carol Burnett Show. He's like, we've been through 50 writers over 10 years, it's like, how many more are we going to burn out for what we've got, and how what other fresh situations can we get there, and then can I bring to it,
I'm surprised they never did just what Bob Hope did. He stopped his weekly series and then he would do specials. Did Carol have no interest in doing TV specials at that point?
Carol did some, but she was looking at some other opportunities. Remember, she did Annie in movies and everything. She was getting more. She was getting more opportunity. Yeah, I didn't say they're all great movies, but she was getting a lot of work in movies in the 80s and that sort of thing, and that kind of dominated it there. And they could have done it, but they would have had to be negotiating with new personnel at CBS, by the 80s, and who may or may not have remembered the show. It's a whole bunch of stuff there. Bob Hope was really a special case because he basically could own NBC, so it was able to dictate the terms with them.
And I guess Carol did try again later. I mean, she did have the short-lived Carol Burnett Show that had Richard Kind and a couple, which had its moments, but nowhere near like this original Carol Burnett Show.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You're always going to be compared like that. Sid Caesar never got what he had with your show of shows, because I think a lot of people felt, well, that's good, but it could have been, where's Imogene Coca, and, where's Carl Reiner and everything. So yeah, there's always, that's the thing, you kind of fight that sometimes, the legacy that you have when you have a TV career. And Carol, to a certain extent, is endorsing, she's got her one woman show. She goes across the country and takes questions and answers and shows clips from the show, and people like that. And it's a nice feeling. And, I think she's been able to determine what she wants in show business, which is good to see, and she's still active.
I guess I'm glad at least that later on she did do a few retrospective shows with the cast, even Lana came back, Harvey and Vicky and Tim, just a couple more times, and even if it was, the bloopers one's pretty good. Bump Up the Lights is kind of, okay, it's like if you've seen it all, but at least, it was nice to see them together a couple more times before they
but
all
I mean,
gone,
I do know when they did the 50th anniversary special of the show, there was, there were some people invited there who had very little to do with Carol, both on and off stage. And that irked certain people in her circle that I know, wish they would have had some things, but that's the way, I guess that they had to sell the thing to CBS to get it that way, have the younger stars on here, Tracy Ellis Ross and some other stuff, had nothing to do with the show. But it did have a 50th anniversary show. So that's,
well, I mean, I was not too upset with having younger people, admiring the show, because it would be like people not our age, saying we grew up with this, and, but the sad part is Tim was already ill, and so he couldn't show up for the show. And I don't know about Lyle, but it kind of been awkward to bring him and not Tim, and Harvey was gone.
I can't remember if Lyle showed up.
He did not. It was just Vicky. Vicky was the only cast member that showed up. And of course, they wouldn't even consider, I guess, Dick Van Dyke making an appearance. But
no, I don't think so. I don't think people like what, and so that was a thing. By the time they did it there, a lot of the guest stars had passed away. So they had to do what they had at the same time. But
so I liked it for what it was. But the biggest glaring thing was, Tim was ill, and it's like, oh, he's sorely missed at this point, because it could have been nice for one more time, but it's like
I know.
And he always surprised me on it. Well, even Lyle too, because it seemed like they were healthy as a horse for the longest time, and then just suddenly, like the last couple of years, I don't know about Lyle as much, but it's like it seemed like he was pretty robust. When he was on the reunion shows prior. Harvey looked a little feeble on some of them. That's why. Harvey
lived to be about 80, I think. So, which was actually pretty good. He had a couple of health issues during this last couple of years going there at the same time. Carol, on the other hand, is in great shape, doing a lot of stuff. She's really vibrant. She's married a younger man, and apparently very happy in that relationship.
She's like Dick Van Dyke in that way, in that regard.
So and overall, I mean, I think it's the good thing about the show is I really didn't have to do too much. There wasn't too much dirt to uncover. Not that I was looking for it there too. There were a couple of them. There was one guest star, a younger singer. I can't remember her name. It shows you my brilliance. But in the 74-75 season, she later had problems, mental problems and everything like that. And I think she died in her 30s, but that's after the show there. Most of them, you have, it's good people associated with good memories on it. So that makes it very nice.
One thing I meant to ask you, and I just slipped my mind, but the episodes that you didn't have, weren't able to view, you still were able to list all the sketches and everything. How were you able to achieve that?
Just what they had from TV listings, that I saw there.
And TV Guide and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And wasn't there a book? What was the book that you mentioned? I forgot what it was. Like a reference book that you can get TV information out of. I forgot the name of it.
Oh gosh. There's a book on that. Oh God.
It's like a reference. I'll have to look it up.
Oh, you don't mean like the Brooks and Marsh thing? You do mean
maybe,
like
yeah. It's like there's a reference. How does one access stuff like that to get TV information like that? I mean, or is TV Guide your best reference for?
Well, it was a combination of there was TV Guide, IMDb. I think those were the main one. I might have looked. I don't think I looked on Wikipedia. I tried to avoid Wikipedia as much as possible. But yeah, it was that, and and newspaper listings and seeing what they had of the show, you know, what they capsule descriptions they had at the time, to make sure they had them. Some of them, like I talked to Shecky Green's.
Oh, here we go. The Ross Reports TV Index. That's what it is.
Okay, that's the one the guy said. No, that's what the man who had the audio thing, Phil Grease, told me that the Ross Reports TV Index indicated that the 69 show didn't air during that time.
Okay.
I've not seen that. He has access to it. I'm like, okay.
Okay. So, okay. Because once I read that, I was like, that might help me in some of my research.
I don't know if that's still in publication, if that was during the time or whatever, you know. So I don't know.
All right. It was just, it triggered a light bulb. Yeah. I was like, I might need this. So anyway, any final thoughts about the show that you'd like to say? I mean, I'll hold up the book just so you can plug it here.
It's a classic, and I'm glad that we now have all of the episodes available to view in some form, you know. And yes, some shows are greater than others. That happens for any show that we have at the same time. But I do think it showcased some of the best comedy and music that we've had on television of all time.
Very cool. And there are just some rip-roaring funny episodes that just make me laugh.
Oh yeah.
Over and over, even if it's been repeated to death, the Dennis sketch still will do it, you know.
Exactly.
Lovely story, you know, anything. Most of the stomach turns anytime Mother Marcus makes an appearance. So
yeah. That's what Carol said. So glad to have a time together. That's really what she wanted to be, you know, kind of like a family laugh along, enjoyable time.
Right. Well, do you have anything else to promote, or if you're working on any other books at this time?
Not right now. Doing the Betty White on TV book was a big undertaking, and it's gotten a lot of good reviews, and it's my 10th one. And so I'm kind of trying to figure out if I want to do an 11th one. If I do, it's got to be something really good. So right now I'm just trying more to get everything in order, other parts of my life first, and then maybe try and see what I can get out right now. As you know, it's kind of it's tough doing TV themed books right now because some publishers won't take them, and also a lot of the classic TV shows now most of them are covered by now. You know, most of the ones that we have, and trying to find a good angle is a challenge in itself. You know.
Right.
So, and I want to make sure that I write about something that I love.
Yeah.
So, you know,
that's always tricky. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
If people want to get a hold of you, website or anything else, what's the best way?
The best way is just go to the Amazon page of me, Wesley Hyatt, my author page. It's got all 10 books there, and you can check them out there and see what you want and leave a review if you hopefully like it, you know. So
I need to leave a review of the Carol Burnett Show. Yes, that's
it's on that. And I'm also on Goodreads too. If you're on Goodreads, that one's a nice one there too. So feel free.
Very good.
Yep.
All right. Well, I thank you, Wesley Hyatt, for joining me again on another great episode of Fun Ideas Podcast. Always a pleasure to talk to you, and it's always great to talk to anybody about the Carol Burnett Show, one of my favorite shows of all time.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Mark.
All right. And we'll see you next time.